Namaste. I know God, for I see it every day. Therefore, I don't need to adopt any doctrine to cultivate faith or align with the divine. People often say that the classic questions about God, the ones about why he didn't just forgive Adam and Eve, or why he created a world where sin was even possible, have already been settled by theology. Theologians, after all, have been refining answers to these questions for centuries. They'll tell you that God's decision not to immediately forgive Adam and Eve wasn't cruelty, but a lesson. The fall, they say, was meant to teach humanity the weight of choice, to show that love without freedom isn't real love, and that consequences are part of divine justice. It's a poetic defense, but when you look closer, it starts to unravel. Because what kind of lesson ends in eternal suffering? Hell, by its nature, doesn't teach or redeem, it only isolates and destroys. If God's aim was education, he chose a method that erases the very possibility of growth. A punishment that yields no understanding isn't discipline, it's disposal. And if creation leads to that kind of end, it says less about human failure and more about divine design. Another common argument is that free will must include the ability to choose wrongly, that if humans could only choose good, they wouldn't truly be free. On the surface, that makes sense. But this argument limits the very being it's trying to defend. If God is all-powerful and all-knowing, wouldn't he be capable of creating a world where freedom exists without sin? Our inability to imagine what that looks like doesn't make it impossible for him. It just exposes the limits of our imagination, not his. To claim otherwise is to reduce God's infinite power to the boundaries of human logic, a strange move for those who insist that faith transcends reason. Then there's the softer defense, that God doesn't really punish anyone at all. The pain we experience, they say, is simply the natural consequence of sin, built into the moral structure of the universe. But if God authored that structure, the distinction collapses. Whether punishment comes from his direct hand or from laws he set in motion, he's still the architect of suffering. To say otherwise is to imply that natural law exists outside of him, which would make him less than sovereign. And if he's truly powerless to prevent his children from being lost forever, then omnipotence becomes a hollow word. When you step back, the problem isn't rebellion or disbelief, it's coherence. These defenses try to protect God's goodness, but each one quietly compromises his power, his love, or both. The result is a version of divinity that looks strangely human, limited, reactive, and uncertain of its own creation. Maybe that's the deeper point of the story, not that God failed, but that human theology does when it tries to explain him away. Because if love and power truly define the divine, then creation shouldn't end in eternal loss. A perfect creator wouldn't need hell to prove a point, but a tribalistic cult might. The underlying premise of the Bible is so inconsistent and flawed that it becomes clear it was not inspired by God, nor does it speak of the divine in the way most believe it does. Personally, I believe God is omniscient, omnipresent, all-powerful, and all-loving, for it is intimately connected to all things, and therefore cannot be anything less. In other words, all things are one with the divine, and as such, the light in me honors and bows to the light in you. Namaste.